This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. As you guys know, whenever it's game week, I always like to get out of my own bubble and get a perspective from outside of Browns world. We spend days talking about the Browns, 3 videos a day. We get so locked into our perspective, we don't think about the other ones out there. So to help me get a Cowboys perspective on this game, I'm bringing in Foots the King. Foots, how you doing, man? Are you as excited about this game? First game of the year, Tom Brady's first call on 4:25 on Fox, which is really like, that feels like prime time football when you playing at 4 o'clock. Yeah, it's the national game. Like, it feels different. It hits it just a little bit different, you know?
Yeah, I'll tell you this, Quincy, and thank you for having me, bro. It makes it even better that both teams are good. You know what I mean? And so, like, I can honestly say I'm very excited for the game. Excited to talk to you, but I'm excited for the game because it's a game. Like, if this was Eagles talk, I'd be popping it. But for you, man, I could be honest with you. This is a game that could go either way.
It is, and it's a game that has so many premierly talented players, like especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you're getting Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett in this game, like two of the most spectacular edge talents like in the last 10 years as far as like raw athleticism goes and what they're able to do in the versatility. So I guess we'll start there with Micah, right? I think that's where every Browns fan thinks when you think about the Cowboys, like CD obviously on the offensive side of the ball, but Micah there on the defensive side of the ball. The Browns are having some issues with their offensive line aging. It's kind of like what y'all had when y'all had that dominant offensive line, and then years after years of wear and tear, it's not the same. But everybody thinks of it as the Cowboys offensive line, right? And that's kind of the thing with the Browns, where it's like a lot of people think of it like, oh, that's the line from 2020 that took the crown from a lot of different teams who had that like #1 offensive line tagged to them. But now it's like, okay, Joe's getting older. Wyatt has been not as good as he was in 2020. Ethan Posic's been pretty solid there, and we like the right tackle situation with DeJuan Jones. It's just left tackle.
One of my favorite prospects is DeJuan Jones.
Yes. We love him there. It's just the left side there with Jed, who I liked a lot coming out of college, but he's just had an issue with, like, I think part of his body language with him, but I think another part of it is, like, it feels like he doesn't have a good clock on when the play is actually up. Yeah. So there's times where he just stands straight up, or he just doesn't have great awareness about him. Like, if the play breaks down a little bit and he has to improvise, he don't know what to do. And he just stand there, right? Yeah. Like, I think that's one of the things with Jed. How do you think they use Micah to try to exploit what the Browns want to do offensively? And do you think that Micah is going to be the crux of the game plan there defensively for the Cowboys?
You know, it's interesting when you talk about Micah and Myles Garrett, it literally is 1 and 2, probably best defensive players in the league. And so what a show we'll get, both drafted, both developed, and both have lived up to the billing. When it comes to the Cowboys, you know, Jedrick Willis would probably be a better matchup. I mean, Jedrick Willis, excuse me. And I remember covering him coming out of Alabama. He would probably be a better matchup if he was a little bit more athletic. But like you say, he's a very tall player. And so you may see Micah lined up on him. But one thing I will say about this Cowboys team is under Mike Zimmer, I think they're going to move Micah all around this year. Like, I don't think so. If you're in Browns world and you're watching the Packers game, just erase that, because Micah lined up at the left defensive end spot. He rushed there all game. And this is a guy at Penn State who played off-ball linebacker. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Micah can't be more than 250 pounds. And so, but that's his game is Von Miller. Miles's game is, you know, press, stack, shed, power. You know, Micah's game is he's quick, he's lightning in a bottle. And so it's actually a good matchup for Micah versus Jed, but I don't think that you'll see him just camped on one side of the formation. Um, so that's what I would tell you, Quincy. I will say this: I your guys' O line to you, you're saying it's deteriorating, but in Cowboys world, I'm telling Cowboys fans be ready because I still look at Batoni. He's a stud. I look at guys and I say, man, and I think that happens in fandom, not even fandom. When you've been covering a team for so long, you kind of take guys for granted. Like
Mm.
you take a I've even taken Zach Martin for granted. I'm like, man, I'm looking at other teams' film. I'm looking at Washington's line. I'm like, nah, yeah, give me Zach Martin. I'm cool. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, you start looking at other O lines around the league. So, I mean, Joe Batonio's been a guy. I've always liked Wyatt Teller. So, I mean, I don't know, bro. I think that's where if you wanted to say the Browns have an advantage is in the way that Kevin Stefanski wants to play football. Now I don't know who's going to be running the ball for the Browns, because we obviously got the news. I was worried about Nick Chubb, but the way that Stefanski wants to play football, I've always known Stefanski is a guy who wants to get downhill. That may be the way to beat the Cowboys is sit on them
Mm.
and lay on them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because the Browns, without Chubb, they were able to move the ball well if you look at it on paper, right? Because you look at it, they had like the 12th highest rushing yards. Nick Chubb went out 5 quarters into the season. You think, okay, they held it down pretty well there. The issue with the Browns' run game last year was they were able to get big plays, but they weren't consistently getting those like 3-4 yard runs that you need on first down to stay ahead of the sticks. And that's what I wonder if they're going to be able to answer. I think they brought in Deontay Foreman to be an answer for that. I know he's technically was recording this video. He's technically cut, but they'll bring him back. Yeah. Just to maneuver some guys around. I think they're waiting to trade one of the quarterbacks that they kept. And then it's also something where when you look at how the Browns function last year, a lot of it was built around what Nick Chubb is excellent at doing, which is getting downhill, getting like 2-3 steps, and then being impossible to tackle. They kind of had to transition that stuff with just using David Njoku underneath and kind of adjust there. We'll see. Their plan on 1st and 10, I think, is what's going to make or break the offensive game plan this season, because with Stefanski, whenever you get ahead of the sticks, you're going to be able to score. You're going to be able to do stuff. He's pretty good at that, and drawing up stuff. The problem is, do you have, and we'll get into it with the Browns, I think the big question with Deshaun is, can he be a quarterback who, when you do get behind the sticks, can rectify that situation so you can get back on track as soon as possible? He has an iffy history with that, right? Like, even if we go back to his Houston days, Deshaun has been somebody who's been capable of those chunk plays, but also the thing with Deshaun that, like, since we have not seen him play a full season in a while, I keep reminding people, like, hey, these things are going to pop up with him when he plays, is he takes a lot of sacks. Like, he is not great with avoiding not taking negative plays. And I worry if that's going to be something that he's worked on and fixed over this time, or if he is done with it, because I think that'll determine how this goes with the Cowboys. Because if you get behind the sticks with them and they're allowed to get real comfortable where they're putting Micah, and now they're putting him, over your center, and giving him those kind of matchups because they're just super comfortable knowing that you have to throw the ball, that's where you run into trouble, and that's where the floodgates start opening up on defense. And it's kind of one of those things where, because that's how the Browns like to do it to other people on defense. Let's talk about the matchup there with the other star player on the Cowboys, with the other 2 star players on the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, going up against this Browns secondary. I'm interested to hear your perspective on this secondary as somebody who is not day to day in with the Browns. Like, when you look at them, when you look at your work on them, what do you think of them, and how do you think you want to attack them?
So I think the world of Denzel Ward. I think the world of the guy. I remember, studying him coming out of college, man. It was like Ohio State for a while was just a factory when it comes to DBs and receivers. And Denzel Ward is one of those guys out of that factory. So I think the world of him. I like Greg Newsome as well. Like, I think both are like really 2 good players. I like Juan Thornhill. To me, Where I would probably try to make my money is in Cowboys land, and people who come at CD as well. He's a slot merchant. Well, that's okay because I've always said, like, if you can do it, you do it. And he has the ability to play on the edge, and he also has the ability to play in the inside. I think that you guys match up well because you have a safety who can do some things as far as Grant Delpit is concerned. Like, I just like the Browns defense. I told you this was going to be a talk. We talked about this pre-show where you probably know the ins and outs. I got to get into more of your guys' film, but I just remember watching the San Fran game. It's like, okay, these guys are physical. They're flying around. They're tackling in space. And then the Houston game happened. It's like, okay, guys are running wide open. Is this scheme? Is it that Shanahan? What's the deal? So I don't know where you guys land. I do know the players, and I'll say this: Dallas doesn't have the same creativity, play caller wise, as that scheme in Houston. But
Mm.
I actually think they have a better player than Nico Collins. I think CeeDee Lamb's a better player than Nico Collins. I mean, I don't who would argue that. So that's the matchup. It's like, can Greg Newsome or whoever, like, who do you let me ask you this question. Who do you see them starting off on CeeDee Lamb?
Oh, they're gonna put Denzel Ward on CD.
Okay.
And if CD's in the slot, they'll just let Denzel follow him into the slot. Now, if he's on the other side of Denzel, like if he gets on that opposite side, so that weak side, you are going to see Martin Emerson on him if they feel
Emerson,
like,
yeah.
yeah, they ain't going to go deep on him because he is real physical and he is like somebody who can test a lot of catches. Greg, they'll probably avoid putting Greg on CD because the one thing with Greg that I've noticed with him is he is really good for what the Browns like to do. The Browns pretty much like to make it so that you don't have an option to get rid of the ball cleanly in the first 2 seconds because you're worried about Miles, and that's how the DBs kind of play. They just bet on that defensive line winning. And Greg Newsome probably bets on that the most.
Yeah.
And if there's one player I don't want on CD in that kind of situation is the dude who's going to bet on the defensive line that hard, because if you do that with CD, he's gone, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you do that with Denzel, he might make that bet, but Denzel has that recovery speed that's unreal, and he can live, like, you can live with him doing that. So I think that's how they'll try to approach this, but I see no reason why they wouldn't let, unless Denzel Ward is not feeling well, wouldn't let Denzel follow CD and would prefer having like a Greg on there, especially since he's coming back from a hamstring.
And now I'll say this: one of the things that you got to keep in mind with the Cowboys is Dak loves the seams. So what
Mm-hmm.
Mike will do is, Michael push CD away. He'll run you off, and then he'll hit Jake Ferguson up the seams. And Dak's really good pre-snap. I'll give you a hint, man. If you want insider talk, it's actually not best to blitz Dak. It's actually
Mm-hmm.
he's really good. His numbers are really good against the blitz. You're actually best playing quarters, playing drop eight, doing certain things pre-snap, and then getting out of there and making Dak go 1 to 2 to 3 to check down. Green Bay did a great job of that. Darnell Savage got him, just making him hold the ball, do certain things like that. And I think that you guys actually have the guys to do it, and that's why the line is what it is, and that's why it's really basically a pick 'em because offensively, like, I can honestly say, in the East, we play a lot of bad secondaries. Philly, bad secondary. The Giants, Deontay Banks, good player, but their secondary as a whole is bad. And then Washington is a turnstile in their secondary. So CD can take his turn, and they don't really have a good plan on the back end. The Browns, I mean, I told you I think the world of Denzel Ward. You guys have guys, and oh, by the way, you got a guy in Joker who has that ability to maybe carry a tight end up the seam to do certain things like that and can kind of, roam free in the middle of the field. Another guy who you guys drafted who, the Cowboys passed on, which I was very hot about because I watched all of his film at Notre Dame, and the guy's a stud. It was just having you. He was a player that you had to have the imagination to be able to use him correctly, and
Mm-hmm.
so you guys have done that. You guys have maxed his potential, and so you guys have the horses, and that's what's gonna make this. The thing is, to be honest, Dallas is gonna have to. They're gonna have to find a way to run the ball. And that's what I don't know if the Cowboys can do, because I don't think that Dallas can drop back 30 times and beat the Browns. Number one, we have a rookie going against Myles Garrett. And then and you can chip and you can do all that type of stuff, but it's Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
He's different. And
Can
I
you
have no
imagine
problem with saying that.
your first game in the NFL?
Boom. And by the way, Tyler Guyton's been really good this preseason. But it's
Yeah.
like it's still it preseason, and then go guard Hercules. Go stay in front of him.
And then like it's because like a couple years ago, I think it happened to who's the left tackle they got out of Carolina?
Oh, you're talking
Nkanku.
about Icky.
Yeah. Like it happened to him, but like at that point, like Miles was a big deal, but now it's like reigning defensive player of the year, the dude who jumped over somebody to block a field goal. I couldn't imagine being Tyler Guyton like 4 months ago. You was at the Senior Bowl,
Yeah. Welcome to the league, buddy.
and now that's Miles. And if the call comes in, it's like, all right, man, we might give you a chip, like,
Yeah.
but you got to hold this down for like 2.5.
Well,
It's gonna be.
like I told so many people over on this side. See, chipping only works when you're playing against secondaries who aren't stout and aren't really good communicators.
Mhm.
I didn't see that on the Browns film outside of that Houston game, and that's why I'm like, was that an outlier? You can help me with that. But the two games that I watched, because I'll just be honest, the San Francisco game was impressive because that was actually the week after they played Dallas, and it was like I was starting to see things like, man, I don't know about Purdy, but then I also like, well, the Browns actually got some dudes over there, so
Mhm.
it's not going to be easy to go to Cleveland and get a win. And then Houston happened, and I'm just like, okay, what is it? So that's the interesting part for me.
I think with Houston, I think some of that was attrition. So they were down both their like almost all their safeties, I think, were out. So no one. It was like Ronnie Hickman, an undrafted free agent. And then I think Grant didn't play in that game. So I think it was just D'Anthony Bell back there too. So I think Juan did get in that game too. So to give him credit, he did play in that game, but he's been dealing with the injury pretty much for the second half of the season. And sometimes like they're human. They'll have games defensively where they are locked in, like especially the big games, right? The 49ers, the Ravens, the big division games, the national TV games, they're going to be locked in. I think what happened in Houston is that they started to think that they could just beat Houston because they just ran through the AFC South so easily in the regular season, especially at the end of the regular season, because I think they blew out Houston. Amari Cooper had like 300 yards on them almost.
You went crazy.
So yeah, so it was something where I think they just kind of took their guard off and they were thinking, oh, we're going to play Baltimore in the second round. We beat Baltimore last time we played them. And they kind of got ahead of themselves and they played sloppy. Like, I think to a man, if you asked them what happened, they came out sloppy. Greg Newsome had some really bad reps there where he just did not get set or he wasn't paying attention to where he was supposed to be. Sometimes with Denzel, when he loses focus, he completely forgets his responsibilities in zone, or he just decides he's going to try to make a play out of nowhere. And then that's where some of the bad habits that the Browns had before Jim Schwartz tried to show, where they had too many guys trying to make plays at the same time and not enough people being where they're supposed to be. So I think that pops in, but a week one situation in a game as big as this, they're probably going to come in as locked in as possible. So I would assume, and it's interesting too, because when you watch the Browns, I think a lot of people get the idea because they're aggressive. They don't blitz as much as people think they blitz.
Yeah.
They just rush a lot, right? Mm-hmm. But I think they're like 27% blitz percentage, which is like in the middle of the league. And I think people get the idea that like, oh, we can go side to side on them, like screen them and do stuff like that. I always tell them like, it's the worst idea you could do because like they play so light and so fast that they're going to get somebody there to slow that down. Do you think that's not part of what the Cowboys do offensively, is that they're going to try to like slide move them horizontally throughout this field instead of just trying to attack them vertically?
One thing I will give Mike McCarthy credit for, he has found a vertical passing game, so I give him credit for that part of it. And I think, listen, with Cooks is one guy who can't stretch the field. The problem is you now need a young player in Jalen Tober to step up. You got a young rookie in Ryan Flournoy, and you got a young player in Jalen Brooks. So it's just like whoever, like it's just like CD and the Temptations. It's like whoever can. So if somebody else can make a play, you'll bank on it. But I mean, the Browns aren't. Their DBs aren't going into the DB room like, oh man, we got to go guard Jalen Tober this week. And this is what I've constantly tried to explain to Cowboys fans. It's like, listen, when you start playing good secondaries, not bottom tier secondaries, but good secondaries, some of these guys on our roster don't come up on a scouting report. And that's just the facts. You know who Jim Schwartz is putting on a scouting report? 88. He's not putting Zeke. He's not putting nope. He's putting 88. We're gonna find 88. We're gonna make his life hell, and somebody else has to beat us because that's what a good coach does. And so that's what Green Bay did. They use resources and it got us in that game. And so that this will be a good test to see just how we adjust and how
Mm.
you like other people will have to make plays or the Cowboys won't win the game.
Let's flip to the other side of this matchup when it comes to wide receiver DB. The Browns bringing in Amari Cooper. They traded for Jerry Jeudy, and then they also have Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman. Probably gonna get some time there, but really it's like David Njoku is a huge part of what they want to do there. Now, I've heard about where the Cowboys are at linebacker wise. Like, how do you feel about their coverage plan, knowing that the Browns are going to want to get that ball to David Njoku? They're going to want to try to force some matchups, get probably. Well, it used to be Elijah Moore they tried this with, so I think it's going to be Jerry Jeudy that they're going to try to sneak up on the linebacker and try to get a big hitter on that. And then you guys are obviously familiar with Amari Cooper and his body of work there in Dallas. So what do you think about that matchup for the Cowboys defensively?
Njoku's turned into a nice player, man. I'll be honest, it starts for me with okay, the same way that you talk about Amari Cooper, who I'm familiar with, a route king. Like, if I had a pecking order, I gotta stop him first. Because if he gets going, he gets confident. Like Amari Cooper's one of those guys where
Mm-hmm.
him being in Dallas, I saw it. If he knows he can beat a guy, he's going to the sideline. Hey, coach, find me. I'm gonna beat him. The
He
difference
is
is, oh
a
yeah, he
genius in his simplicity sometimes, because he is like, if they can't stop this route, a lot of guys get caught up in like trying to run a bunch of different ones to see what he's like, no, he can't. Cause I think it happened to Joey Porter Jr. last year, where Joey Porter Jr. couldn't do anything about this slant that Amari
no,
Cooper was running. Couldn't do
no.
nothing about it. And Amari was like, I'm running it every time. Just run that, throw it to me, and it's going to be what, 5-6 yards every time.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting because, like the Cowboys secondary is actually really deep and really good. Like both say they're not big names, but like Malik Hooker was a guy at Ohio State. Donovan Wilson will knock you out. Physical safety.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Kendricks, he's older player, but I think in Zimmer's defense he'll be fine. And then if Bland was healthy, I feel like our corners, honestly, I wouldn't say they were better than the Browns corners, but it's like neck and neck because they're both really good. I mean, people give Trayvon Diggs a lot of flack because, the one year he had all the interceptions, but he gave up a lot of yards. And it's like, bro, Diggs is a top 10 corner easily, like healthy, easily. Now, the question is he, does he fully trust himself? Good luck chasing around Cooper all game. The one thing I do like about Diggs is he will put his hands on you and he'll get physical. Problem is, now Bland's out, and you have
Mm-hmm.
a rookie in there in Kalen Carson, who has been outstanding in camp, but that's camp. This is the big leagues. And, with Stefanski and some of what he likes to do with play action and overs and how he gives those guys freedom, just get ready. You see what I'm saying? Like it's big. The middle of the field doesn't bother me. The edges do. Um, I think that the Cowboys have safeties that match up with Njoku. Um, and they have guys who can run with Njoku. I mean, DeMarvin Overshown, he didn't play last year. Stud. Like I'll take him to the bank as being a stud. Honestly, a lot like Joker in that way, built like
Mm-hmm.
Joker. So I feel great about the middle of our defense. It's really can Kalen Carson hold up on, because I'm sure Stefanski will find ways to get him at, because people got to remember, like I would say at this point in his career, Amari's like a poor man CD. there was a time when Amari was better than CD. He's still really good, but I think CD's probably a tad bit more explosive. But like Amari can still run every route. Probably still a better route runner than CD, but CD has improved as a route runner. He can run every route. He knows every receiver position. Like Amari Cooper's been a really good pro. So that's where, for me, with Nick Chubb out, the tiers would be I want to start with Amari Cooper, taking care of him. And then we just got to see who Deshaun Watson is. Like he hasn't been accurate. Um, he's bailing out of pockets that I saw on film. But he didn't even play a lot of football to really get in the rhythm. So like, what Deshaun Watson am I getting? Deshaun
Mm-hmm.
Watson at one point was a guy who was like, man, this guy's coming, going toe to toe with Patrick Mahomes. And then now it's just like, so I know I kind of jumped all over the place, but when you talk about your receivers versus our corners and our secondary, I'll say this: the middle of our field, I feel fine. It's really the edges. If you had,
Yeah.
I would be concerned because honestly, I don't know if Diggs is really healthy. He's camp healthy, but camp isn't live bullets.
And it's interesting because, like, if I say where it's been interesting talking about Deshaun Watson and figuring out where he is and what he's been doing well, because I think some things around him haven't been going great. Like, I don't think the mesh between what Kevin wanted to do with him and how he wanted to play him and how Deshaun Watson plays was going great. They brought in Ken Dorsey to hopefully lead. I know there was like rumors they were trying to bring in like Kellen Moore too at some point, but it's been something to where they've tried to change it and try to make him a little bit more comfortable. I know with Deshaun, in the small samples that we have seen him, he tends to be a bit more accurate when he gets that time to attack those edges. It's just the comfort over the middle of the field that you saw in that 2020 film with him, where it's just like, he looks so comfortable throwing like all these passes in the middle. He's throwing them in guys in stride, in between the hashes. We haven't seen that in Cleveland yet. We haven't seen that level of comfort. We haven't seen that version of him in Cleveland. But it's also been the weirdest sample size with him, right? You talk about 6 games after a 700-day layoff, comes back, plays 3 games in a row, has a really good game versus Tennessee, then he gets hurt, comes back too early, then he goes away, then he comes back, plays well versus Arizona, but it's Arizona, and then has that second half versus Baltimore where he really started to figure some things out as far as managing the game and let the Browns their biggest win of the season. And then he gets hurt for the year. And we're back at it again. New offensive coordinator. I mean, every year we brought in Deshaun Watson. We've been talking about the changes to the offense that we're making for him. And it's been 3 years. So I think everybody's antsy about that in Cleveland, and anxious about it and not really sure how it's going to look, because when you do play in that scattered of a sample, the stats aren't going to be great. Like the cumulative stats aren't going to look great for you. The advanced numbers aren't going to look great for you. And it just really paints an unclear picture of where he is. I think there's some reason to be positive on it because I think he showed some encouraging signs. Like I feel like if he would have played the whole season, we would feel much better because he would have got those games versus those easier opponents that Joe Flacco got at the end of the year. But it's also one of those things where it's like, that's just worrying about where we feel with him. We don't even know, okay, now that he's good, where would we rank him? And which is an important question, right? Because is he on the same tier as Pat? Like, is he going to be like, nobody's on that tier, but is he on that same tier that like Lamar's on, where he's like a 2-time MVP? Can he attack from there? Or is he like Brock Purdy? Is he Tua? Like, even if he's good, you got to figure out where on the good spectrum. Yeah, like, and how far that can take you. Right, because not every there's a lot of good quarterbacks you can only go but so far with, and I think that's another question that they have to ask. When you look at this matchup, if you were to say this is how the Cowboys win this game, how do you think that plays out, or what the most likely scenario is to play out for the Cowboys to win this game?
You can't have Myles Garrett take over the game. That would be like you got to be able to get plays off the ground, which Miles, Micah, they can get in zones where they can take over drives where it doesn't even have to be sacks. I tell people stop stat watching. Sacks aren't. I've seen Micah dominate the league in pressures. I've seen Miles do the same thing. If he's around your quarterback, it starts to get in their head. Now, Dak is a pro, and there's certain things you can do. He's really good pre-snap. I think that's Dak's best. Like he thinks he's Peyton Manning. He doesn't have Peyton Manning's skill set, but like that's who he thinks he is, and he's good at it. He is. You got to get a guy credit. But it's Myles Garrett, bro, and it's a rookie, and we also have a rookie center, and they both have been awesome. But Quincy, these are two guys that can wreck a game. And Myles was defensive player, and I couldn't argue with him being defensive player over Mike. I love Michael, but Myles is different. And I really remember, the game that really sold me on just how good he was I keep bringing up the San Francisco game, but like he really showed me that like Trent Williams was human. It's like, man, like Trent can't block this guy. Not only
Hmm.
can Trent not block him, I don't think Trent wants to block him. And like you could just tell. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. If you could somehow neutralize him, maybe tempo, maybe chips, but you're not going to be able to chip him all game because you guys have a good secondary. That's the one thing that I would say that's how you win the game. Because I think that our offense, I say this, offense always takes a little bit longer to get going, and Deshaun Watson just hasn't been out there. So I probably would be more scared if it was Flacco, but Watson just at this point in his career, I mean, I know Browns fans don't want to hear this, but like I'm okay with playing Deshaun Watson at this point in his career, what he's shown me as of late. But I would say taking care of Myles Garrett.
Definitely taking care of Myles Garrett. I mean, that's going to be number one on anybody's game plan versus the Browns. And if Deshaun wants to get to that point to where he's number one game, it's going to be tough to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
number one over Miles, right? But you still like even if you believe in Deshaun, I do think that it like he's still not there where you can just guarantee say, hey, he's 2 or 3 on that game plan when you're talking about Nick Chubb and Myles Garrett playing active for this team. So it's something where he's just going to have to prove that he still has it in the way that he has, and until he plays the requisite amount of games that he needs to, and he looks the way he needs to. All those questions are going to be fair
Now you know what?
about
I'll
him.
say this, not to cut you off. That also could work in your favor if, and this is a big if he can show you that he can just be good. Like remember we said the spectrums of good. Well, now you do have Amari Cooper who could still play. Now you do have Njoku. Now you do have some pieces. If he's your fifth best player, but you know what? He's shown some things. He can move the offense. He's better than Joe Flacco, and you're not relying on him to win games, but you're winning in spite of, and he's doing some nice things. I would say Browns fans will take that because it's still better than Flacco to me in the athleticism. And as he gets going, he keeps getting better. Maybe as the year goes on, he moves up the list.
Yeah, the big thing with the Browns offense is the turnovers. That was the thing that really destroyed them last year. Throughout the whole year, I mean, even in that San Francisco game, I believe they turned the ball over 3, 4 times in
They
that game,
did.
and like, which is a testament to how good that defense was last year. That they did not rank lower because of those turnovers. But yeah, that was the big thing. I mean, even in that Houston Texans game, it was a what 4? It was potentially going to be a what 4 to 7 point game. They were in scoring range. Joe Flacco pops out 2 pick sixes back to
Yeah.
back, and then they go for it on fourth down. That leads to a touchdown on their side. And like 3 minutes later, you're down by like 25 points. And the game's pretty much over.
Yeah.
So it's the turnovers on offense they need to figure out. I think that's why a lot of people, even if they're not the most optimistic on the evidence that Deshaun has showed when he's been out there, they do feel much better about his ability to manage that game and take care of the football. The question is he going to be somebody who can manage it at a high enough level where we're not worried about the run game not being able to carry the offense, or is he going to be able to carry the offense a little bit through passing? And then once you get there, we talk about the level of good that he's going to be. It's going to all be up in the air for Deshaun. I think they're going to have to figure that out. But anything else about the Cowboys you think Browns fans should know before we head out, man?
I mean, I think that the low hanging fruit will be the Cowboys running back situation. I would be careful of just saying that they won't be good because I'll say this. I like Rico Dowdle. I think that he'll get you the tough yards. He has fresh legs. I'll say this. I love our young center. I think our center, people are
Oh,
talking about
BB?
Guyton. Yeah.
I like him.
If you follow the draft, I think BB may have a better rookie year. He's so low to the ground. He's super physical. Um, he's an upgrade right now already over Tyler Biotis. So I really like him. It just to be really about what run schemes Mike wants to carry in that game, whether it's gap scheme or whether he wants to lean more into some zone stuff. So we'll just have to see. But
What do you think that rotation of backs is going to look like? Like, because I know a lot of people in Cleveland think that Zeke is going to be taking the bulk of the carries
and
in that
that's
rotation.
not the truth. And I'm here to tell
Yeah.
you, Malik. So Rico Dowdle will be the starter.
Okay.
Um, I think that Zeke will come in for spell work. Zeke will actually probably be in on third down and maybe one of those guys chipping Miles
Mm.
Garrett and just giving him a shoulder and giving him, a chicken wing. Hey, Miles, stay off my quarterback type vibe. But at the same time, he's really good in pass pro. I just don't know what Zeke has left. And it sucks because the Patriots were literally like bottom five talent last year. O line bad. Their defense was cool, but just so you don't know what Zeke has to give, but it's not much for sure. So rotation wise, it's not going to be the Zeke of old. I can promise you that. Now that being said, two players you have to honestly respect on this team. Dak Prescott gets a lot of flack. Dak Prescott is really good, especially in when he's under control and like Dak is good. So Dak is one player that you have to respect because he'll take chances, he'll make throws, and then honestly Jake Ferguson. Like I really want to see how you guys carry Jake Ferguson, and how you guys deal with him off play action, off certain things like that. But other than that, man, I mean, you pretty much got it pegged. This Jim Schwartz is going to have CeeDee Lamb, and I know Schwartz from being in the NFC East. Like Schwartz is going to have the Browns ready to go to war with CeeDee Lamb. The good thing about CD is he's not one of those receivers who's going to bite back down. Like it's going to be he's physical. He's not scared of work. It's just going to be good football, man. Like really good football.
Going to be some excellent battles, right? You talk about CD Lamb, Denzel Ward going at it. You get to see Micah Parsons, Miles Garrett. It's going to be some fun battles to watch there this Sunday. Want to thank you for coming on, Foots. Let them know where to find you, where to get more of you if they want to do that.
YouTube, Foots the King. If you're in the draft talk, I'm always talking draft on Twitter at Cowboys on Twitter. And on IG, kind of my personal vibes on IG. So man, everything is Foots the King, FOOTSDAKING, man. Thank you for having me, brother.
No problem, man. Thank you for being on. Appreciate everybody for watching. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.